You bet. Perfect. And we have a forum. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, everyone. It is 8 o'clock, 8 a.m., bright and sunny. I'm Barbara Noseworthy, and I'm going to call this meeting to order. Let's start by just going around the table, introducing ourselves. Please, I'll start with Kathy.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Kathy Morris. I'm the chair of the Durango Fire Protection District. Welcome.
Fire Protection District.
Jessica Buell, City Councilor.
Jose Madrigal, City Manager. Wilson, City Council.
Melissa Youssef, Mayor Pro Tem.
Bud Smith, General Counsel. I'm Hal Dowdy, Fire Chief.
And Baxter, City Councilor.
Patty Zink, Secretary Treasurer of the Fire Department Board.
Great, and I understand we'll have a member coming as well in a few minutes.
Later.
Thank you. When I chair this meeting, I'm going to actually read a land acknowledgement. It is my statement of a land acknowledgement. It does not reflect the individual views of council members, but I did want to acknowledge this legacy. So, for thousands of years, this region was home to numerous people, bands, tribes, and nations. Each had their distinct culture, artistic expression, and community mores. In particular, this region was the ancestral home of the Nuchu, Ute bands, Dene, Navajo, Pueblo, Hopi, multiple Apache bands, and various other tribes and Latinx people who used and stewarded this land. I recognize that indigenous peoples were forcibly removed from their ancestral lands by the US government. It is important to recognize that the narrative of this region has mostly been told from the dominant perspective without recognition of those who came before us and who to this day continue to thrive, create, and connect with this land. Thank you for your respect in acknowledging this legacy. Let's start with the meeting. Thank you. So we have two agenda items, a status of the downtown station project, and item 2, a discussion of the Durango Fire Protection District request for the city of Durango to contribute in design costs for a possible joint building at the downtown station project. I believe number 1 was submitted by the city manager. Is that correct? And number 2 by the fire chief? Both from the fire chief. Okay, perfect. Chief Doherty, we'll turn it over to you.
Take it away, you bet. So I thought it was important. We had committed originally that we would try to do once a month, but we've fallen kind of dismally short of that. It seems like we've averaged maybe once every month or every third month. I felt like it was a worthwhile venture for us to get back together and just have a conversation, have an opportunity to give you an update on kind of the status of our project. And so that first agenda item was along that line. As you're aware, we've been moving forward with the opportunity to try to develop a plan to prepare for submittal for a process to go through the community development and finally the building of the new fire station and remodel of the historic building. We are in the throes of working on that. Based on offers from your community development department, as well as suggestions from city management. I've worked closely with all of the group that has influence over how that goes with what we need to do, what that submittal needs to look like. And based on work with them, one of the biggest projects that's going on now is the traffic study. We had originally thought that we were going to get at least a draft of that by the middle of April, which obviously is now coming on. And we're told we think that we may have a draft as early as a week from now and ready for public release potentially at the middle of May. So I'm looking forward to that. I know that that's a big issue that's on everyone's mind, especially the other property owners that are in that neighborhood. I know that that's one of the major contingencies that approval of this process is going to rely on. So I wanted to bring to light something that I promised during our public forum that we held, and give you guys an idea about what I'm thinking about. I know that you're not able to make a decision in this format, but as a point for discussion, later. One of the things that we thought would be a worthwhile venture was that since there's so much focus in the community on the parking arrangements and specifically 12th Street traffic, which we believe, independent of the submittal of the site plan, will need city council approval in order to get to a point where that traffic plan for 12th Street as well as parking on 12th Street could be approved. We thought that it may be best to provide we think that we've got 5 strong options for what traffic flow on 12th Street and parking on 12th Street may look like. And we thought that at the point that we go public with our traffic plan, we might provide those 5 opportunities as sort of a design charrette, sort of in the spirit of the way that the city has done most of the other design ideas, including the most recent for the recrafting of Maine, and get the public that attends to weigh in on their preferences for how that parking and traffic flow may look. I'll remind you that our contractor that we hired for the traffic study is SEH Engineering. Steve Winters is the local principal for that. He is also the principal on many of the projects that you as the city already have going, including Midtown, the 14th Street one-way project, the fix of 11th as it terminates into a parking lot, and 12th with regards to the possibility of the underpass for the pedestrian / bicycle pathway. So we felt like there was great synergy associated with hiring SEH as our consultant on this, because he actually has a prior knowledge of all the contingencies associated with that. Interestingly, most recently with the advent of the petition that went around, this would really help to satisfy a great deal of the desire for the public to connect the other projects that the city is committed to and the other standards that now seem to be set with relation to the urban renewal area, the TIF opportunities and things like that. And we felt like he had the best opportunity to be able to connect those things and explain how this might fit into all of those. So we were really happy to get him on board, and they had another big project going on, which is why our timeline got pushed back. So that's the story on the traffic study, the parking, and the way that that's going. We are also at a point where the concept phase of our design features is really over. We have arrived at what it is that we're suggesting should be the project, which is a combination of utilizing what currently stands as 44,000 square feet in the historic building as an opportunity for both fire administration and the PD to exist simultaneously in the same building, saving both of us a great deal of money based on the fact that there's so many economies of scale associated with that. And this is the part, I'll go over just the basic physical aspects of this, but then there's an ask at the end of that, which is item number 2 on our agenda. So for those that may not have had the opportunity or the benefit and may not remember from the last joint meeting that we had, the way that design looks, and this was a joint effort between the fire department, your police chief and the city manager's office, and our architect. We have the marching orders, as we understood it, were to go in and evaluate whether or not that facility could work for your police department, and if it could, how are the design features, and does it provide an opportunity for continuity into the future. And I think that as a result of the work that was done there, and the commitment that you made to march forward with that, where we arrived is that the design would feature 16,153 square feet of dedicated space for your police department. That's increase over what they currently have. And it allows for design features that not only meet their current needs, but room for expansion for what they believe their future needs will be as we move forward. The fire administration space would be 10,071 feet, and there will be 19,285 square feet of shared space. And it's that shared space that I think really provides us the opportunity for savings. The economies of scale associated with only needing to be half owners in shared space, but space that is drastically needed by both organizations, I think is a wonderful opportunity. Those spaces include gymnasium, where both the police organization and fire organization employees have the opportunity to work out. Men's and women's locker room facilities so that they can get dressed. They have room to store their gear while they're working out, have shower opportunities and things like that. The large auditorium space that provides us the opportunity to brief as many as 300 people at a time in a situation of community emergency, or when we have briefings going on for fire and police simultaneously for things like snow down and other major events that happen in our community. So I feel like the opportunity there is that both agencies can benefit greatly from being half owners in space that each of us needs. So that's where we stand. Our timeline is really on hold at this point because if I may, as we move to agenda item number 2, we came here today with the intent of asking for a commitment to partnering with us on this. And I know that that's not something that you can decide now. I know that there are many, many questions that you as a council will need to answer and figure out associated with that. But we're stopped. As the design process goes, what ends up happening is first we have a conceptual phase. And in that conceptual phase, we figure out what the opportunities are, what the building may look like. Can we all fit? Do all that's the part that's completed. And that's a very small portion of the total of designing the project. The next step is that we go from an acceptable concept that we all buy into to actually designing where the wires run and where the plumbing pipes run and what spaces are where and how do the door systems work, all of which are critical to the police department's function in their space, which ends up leading us to needing to answer the question before we draw those pages of the plans of, are we designing for the Durango Police Department? And if so, how do we go about doing that? And if not, what are the next steps? So I represented in the community forum that we held some numbers, and I want you to understand, as I spoke with your city manager, these are still rough numbers. They're estimates based on our best opportunity to estimate how much all of this project may cost. And at that time, I represented to the community, as I had to the city manager, as I had to the police chief, that I believe that we're looking at coming in for a total project cost of somewhere in the neighborhood of $9.5 million for the police department's side of that building, should you decide to move forward with that. That's consistent with what I've said from the very first conversations that we've had about this. The study that was done in 2015 numbers contemplated $19 million for you to replace your police department. And I said I thought that I could make something work for about half of that. And I think that we've done a great job of planning, and we're coming in really close to what it is that we believed was the opportunity. Now, there's all kinds of questions associated with that you're going to have to answer among yourselves. How do you come up with that money? What does it look like? Is that something that you need to go to the public with? Is that something that you can afford a payment across 20 years, that amount of money is probably in the neighborhood of $500,000 to $600,000 a year. A really reasonable amount, I would think, to finance something that would be such a lasting benefit to the community. But I also recognize that you've got an awful lot of divisions and departments in the city and many other folks to deal with. So I wouldn't venture to go any farther than just to say, I think this is a wonderful opportunity for you. I think it would benefit the community greatly. And we're here today to offer that to you. Now, down the line of what does it look like to take the next step? Mr. Madrigal uses a great analogy where he talks about different points where there's off-ramps, right? So we've been going down the road together. We've been contemplating what this facility might look like. We've been figuring out whether we can all fit and make it work. And this is certainly that next opportunity where you guys can say, hey, we're in, or hey, we've decided that we're out. But for me to move forward, I've got to have an answer to that question so that I can tell my architect, hey, make the other half of the building a police department, or make it something else for another partner that we may have. So what I was asked to do as we discussed this was tell the city council what it would cost to move through that next step. Now, the actual design, this is the bulk of the work that the architect does. So this part is the heavy lift for both of us. And the way that the price structure breaks down is that it looks like to design the police department into this, run the electrical, technology feeds, everything that's needed in order to do that. Our number is $132,892. I think that's a huge savings over what, from a percentage standpoint, the thought was that design might cost. But it's a big number, and I'll tell you, you shouldn't spend that unless you're committed to this. But I don't think that you're going to find another opportunity to replace your police department for anywhere near the savings that I'm representing to you that you can do here in partnership with us. So the ask is, would you commit to moving forward at a cost of $132,000 and some change in order to move forward with designing this to be a police department? Or are you at the point where you want to commit to getting off on that offer and say, we are not interested in partnering with you on this, and you should move forward seeking other opportunities? Again, I recognize that as a study session, you're not able to make a decision on that, but I just want to make it clear where we are and the point that we're at, and that we're on hold until we figure out if we're partnering. In a maybe a record-setting fashion, that's everything that I came here to say to you today.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to open it up, but I don't know the city manager.
So, absolutely. As we've talked about the possibility of what does a joint station looks like, this is a portion of where we've come to a off-ramp. The first part was, could it work? What does it look like? How does it design? The layout, I think it's what we would call them, the layout has been shown. I got the design number from Hal yesterday afternoon when we talked, so it's kind of new to me. It's still, though, I thought was important for us in a public setting to kind of let everyone know where we actually are in this process, what has actually been committed to, and we're still doing that due diligence. I told Hal that my biggest concerns still remain, as I understand estimates. Estimates are what you can do, what's the information you have that's best. We're going to hear later tonight at our council meeting that estimates that we had going into our budget as we've gone through the procurement process have actually come in over 150 to 200% more than we had anticipated. That does not mean that I'm saying how your estimates are wrong. I'm just seeing where the market is today. And that's kind of where we have this chicken or the egg type of situation which we're at. I would feel more comfortable knowing what that actual cost is going to be for the PD building, and that's not something we can get until we go through the design, and he's able to have his construction manager come on board and begin giving real updates and prices. So what we see at this point is, from my vantage point, it's a bit of a gamble. $38,000.
$132,892.
That still needs a lot of time. So I told him yesterday afternoon, obviously, in a study session, we can't make decisions, but that I would take this number and I would definitely bring it back to the council at a posted meeting where staff can talk to the council a little bit more on what we found out, what we see are our challenges with accepting this, what we see as our risks, and then also decide at that point to provide a recommendation to council that we think going forward is a necessary avenue on this one. Just not there yet to give you a formal recommendation on where we're at specifically, just getting the number yesterday afternoon, which is no fault about, but I still think it's important that we have this discussion. This joint meeting brought together, remember, is to continue to keep each other informed as we're going step by step. So I think that's a good thing to do in front of the public setting and know here's where we're at today.
Thank you. I'll open it up for questions from council or comments from the fire district board.
You mentioned in your discussion here, being half owner in the space. How does that work?
So the best opportunity that I have that I can liken this to is actually a project that was already done in the state of Colorado. It's an agreement between the Avon, the city of Avon, and the Eagle Fire Protection District. The Fire Protection District, like us, is a special district in the state of Colorado. So they have to play by all the same rules, follow all the same guidelines. And Avon is a home rule city. And they have partnered on the opportunity for a joint facility that involves the police department and the fire department. Fire department being a special district, the police department being a department of the city of Avon. And our attorneys that we've hired as special counsel on this particular project were instrumental in forming that agreement. And basically what ends up happening is that we craft an MOU, is that the right word?
I think it was actually an IGA.
An IGA that articulates who's responsible for what, who has what space, how that all works. And I've been told by our finance consultants who, by the way, in a synergistic fashion, are also your finance consultants that you have on contract or retainer, that's a very easy thing for them to do, to be able to provide opportunities for if this is the building and this is the fire district's half and this is the police department's half, somewhere in the middle we have joint space, that it's very easy for us to do that, a fractional ownership or joint tenancy type of an agreement. So that's my understanding of it. You guys know I'm not a very smart guy, certainly not the right guy to talk to about finance options, but my understanding is that there's a model for this that's already occurred in our state, that this is something that we can very easily do and draft an agreement which covers all the legal necessities of that. And you own half and we own half. And we agree to both maintain the areas that are joint tenants space.
I understand fractional ownership and joint tenancy. I'm not quite certain how that works very well when disagreements occur or when things change. 20 years from now, things may not be that tired. So you're going to take it's going to be a little bit more information exactly how that works and what the benefits of the community are. If we're looking at $10 million being into this property that we don't own the entire thing, I'm very, very concerned about how that works.
Yep, I understand that. Provided to the city manager's office, I can provide it again if need be, the copies of that IGA. And there are actually two documents that are their guiding documents. One, I believe, was maybe an initial one, and the other one was after a year or two, they updated that. I've provided that.
I'm not going to read all the details of the IGA. That's not my job as a city councilor. It's my job then to have someone who understands how that all works, is professional at that. Let me know the pros and cons and how things work and where there's hang-ups and where there's benefits to it, and then to evaluate from there.
Great.
So that would be my request. Not the detail, but how it really affects the city, how it really affects the community, what the drawbacks are.
Sure. Your city manager and your attorney have that.
Other questions for Hal?
I'd also like to say, I know that there's a lot of other facilities, Vegas, Salt Lake, Virginia, Minnesota, that have all done this combined. Some of even city manager offices and city halls and in the process. And I'm sure some of the fire stations are owned, or departments are owned by the city too. But I'm sure there's some that are separate. So how they thought about it and just some comparisons. I'm kind of like at a like as I was saying, an off ramp, but I don't want to miss this opportunity because I feel with the economies of scale, it could be a great opportunity for us to provide. You look at a $9.5 million police station design cost. I just Googled it because are around $389,000 to $769,000 for just the police department design costs for a new police or renovated police facility, depending on the complexities of it. So $132,000 for a design of a police station is actually a great cost savings in the long run, if this is the route we think we're going to go. And so when you look at facilities that are bigger, construction costs get lower per square foot, which is, we would share in that, we would share in the space. I want you to feel supported, and that this, I think, is could be a great idea and be a great end product. But we also have to have some fiscal responsibility. We can't just give design money over and hope that you pass the planning review process. Hope one of your fire traffic studies looks good and works. I agree that 12th Street, I just drove down it yesterday and I had to back up and pull over a little bit because the truck was coming down the other way. So 12th Street needs help anyways.
It's a problem without.
I 100% agree with that. And so maybe one of your ideas, there's all these maybes and for example, someone came to another one of my meetings asking to build money to build a convention center. It's we can't just give you money to potentially build a convention center. We have to be responsible with it. So that is what I'm looking for, is that solid, yes, this makes sense. It's what we want to do. It's the best location for the fire department. It's all these things, and the police department locating equally as well, and then go forward with the design process. I want you to feel supported. Obviously, the police station's going to go there with sharing costs, but especially with the initiative going on right now, and we want to make sure that everyone's being heard and it's the best decision for the city. So I'm sort of kind of.
So,
Thank you. No.
believe me too.
No,
Yeah.
I
We
wish
all
that I
are.
could come to you guys and say, here's the complete package. And this is everything you're gonna spend on this, and this is what it's gonna cost. Unfortunately, because of the way that the process works, you have to take that as stride. And your city manager was really clear in kind of explaining why he thinks this is such a tough thing, and that is that the fire board has had this as a goal and a marching order for as long as they've been on the board. Many of them have been on the board for 8 or more years. And so this is something that we've had as a goal and been marching toward the whole time.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden, but all of a sudden, then some fire chief guy marches into one of your meetings and says, "Hey, join me. Bring your police department into this." And it's cold for you guys. You guys have not spent all that time thinking about that and working toward that. So I get that. And if the answer is no, I'm going to be disappointed, because I think this is an opportunity to support that man and to give your police department a quality place from which to do business. But there could be others. There certainly may be others. And so I get it about that. I would represent to you that I think that this is the best opportunity and the most cost-effective opportunity you've got to replace that police station. But it doesn't matter what I do. It matters what you guys believe and what you want to do and what you've got the capacity to do. So I'm fully aware and understand all of that stuff. And as your partners, we are still contractually obligated with you
Yep.
to protect the people that live in your town. And we will continue doing that no matter what, and move on from this if the answer is no. I hope it's yes, because I think it would be a travesty for our community if it wasn't. But I'm committed to this no matter what.
I think Melissa might have a question, or, and did Councilor?
Thank you for the presentation. It's nice to see everybody. When I first, sat down to take a look at all this and study, I do find this kind of difficult timing, given where we are, also with our community initiative. And so I want to ask you about the timing, if we were to move forward together. And I want to look at that. I want to understand how that timing would work in conjunction with the community-wide initiative.
Yeah.
So we really have full understanding publicly what that looks like. Despite the fact that it's difficult timing, also I agree with Councilor Buell. I think she said it well. I also want to make sure that you feel supported. We all know that these services are needed in our community. And we also I've served on the council in years past where we recognized that our #1 initiative at the time was to get our fire department a new location. It was the #1 initiative over everything at the time. And that initiative community-wide failed. So I do see this also as a great opportunity, not one that I want to delay, but I also want to have more information as we process this information, as Jose was suggesting, such that we are also still being fiscally responsible with city funds. So I do see this as an opportunity that could be really beneficial for our community, our joint relationship, shared space. The economies of scale of that are real. I get that. And so I do want to move forward with that, but I do want to understand, again, timing. I also want to recognize and ask, if you have any other partner options that you would consider. I think that the economies of scale work really well with the DPD because they need the shared locker space, the gym facilities, all that is really would be a great asset for that organization, as well as I see it. And I saw it in the initial designs, but I want to understand what you would do if you didn't have the city as a partner.
Yeah, so I've had several different organizations approach me with interest in occupying the other space or the unused space in that. I'm obviously not going to share those today, what their names are, but things from actually potentially other emergency service organizations, educational organizations, many others. I, like you, see that the best fit is would be if we were dealing with another strong emergency service organization, potentially that has many of the same security concerns, the privacy needs, all that stuff, which is why I believe that combining the fire department and the police department is such a great move for the community. I think that the reason that other communities across our nation are doing this is for exactly the same reason. Why would we build two secure facilities that two structures, two roofs, two everything, if we have the opportunity to combine them in and benefit from that? And I think as all of us across the nation in public service have had to tighten our belts and figure out ways to make things work and still serve the community, more and more restricted budgets and tremendously higher costs associated with everything that we do, including our employee costs, the vehicle costs, everything that you guys and we deal with on a daily basis. I think that's the best fit and the most beneficial opportunity that our community could squeeze out of this. However, I've got to replace my fire station because I have my employees working in an unsafe, unhealthy, and an unsuitable location currently. I'm contractually obligated with you to replace that fire station. I feel strongly the need to support the men and women that work for me in getting them into an adequate space. You guys know this. It is similar, but maybe not as dire a situation for you with your police department. I sat in a Zoom meeting with your police chief where he had a can on his desk next to him where the roof was dripping down while he was talking to us on the Zoom call. So we both have significant facility needs that we need to take care of. There will be other people that I will court if I'm not able to make this work with you, and we will find someone to partner with. Although I don't believe it will be in the best interest of our community to do that.
Great. Okay, you answered that question. So you have other partners. What, can you talk to me about the timeline?
Yeah.
You know, what it looks like in light of
Yeah.
potential community meetings?
Yeah. So my highest priority is to operationally get my people moved out of River City Hall to vacate that space and put them in an adequately designed, safe, effective, healthy environment to work out of. And so I initially contemplated as we looked at this project, maybe trying to do both simultaneously. The fire station portion of the carriage house building, which will be the apparatus bays with living space above them for men and women that work there in response to the calls, and the remodel section. I've been steered away from that now. Both our financial advisors and our attorneys group and bond counsel have steered me toward separate the two projects, do one, then the other, finance them separately. And so I'm inclined to obviously follow their advice on that. So I believe from a timing perspective, we would be focused most on completing the carriage house project first, which would get us functionally moved there for responses out of that facility, and follow that with the remodel of the historic building, which would include the police space as well as fire space. As far as an absolute timeline, hesitant to even try to commit to anything because it would only be a guess, but I can tell you that if I could stick a shovel in the ground today to start the carriage house project, I think we're looking at a minimum of 18 months before that's done.
Mhm.
So we're probably talking about a time factor of a couple of years before we would even be at a point to start down the road of remodeling the historic building.
Right.
I'm contractually obligated to purchase agreement with the school district. They maintain possession and ability to utilize the space in the historic building through the end of this year. That's the current agreement. I had somebody ask me in a community forum, am I going to throw them out on their ear if they don't have anywhere else to go? Certainly not. We've opened the opportunity for them to extend their arrangement with us if they choose, but no movement has been made on that as yet. So I think that the best, most legitimate answer I could give you is I think we're at least 2 years out before we started on that remodel project. If everything else fell in line and we were able to start with the carriage house project almost immediately.
Essentially, that gives us 2 years to figure out whether or not the design for the police department works for the city in a sense, because we, so that study to the recommended 19,000 square feet isn't actually necessarily accurate today. And if you look at what the sheriff's department did out of the park, that may very well happen. So, because it's much less than 19,000 square feet, but it would give the city time then to do the studies and the research that we need to do to figure out whether or not this project works, rather than having to make that decision in the next month. So that's the consideration.
Okay, so
The other question that I had has to do with, you mentioned that the traffic study and the parking situation would come to council separately from the design of the building and planning of the building. So if you could address that.
yeah, so that's based on my understanding, and Kevin is here and may be able to comment even more completely than I could on that. My understanding was that because the traffic study would include recommendations for the change in the way the city street works, that would be required in order to get to the point where we could get approval on the site plan, but not part of the site plan. But that would come to the city council as a separate topic. Am I saying this right, Kevin?
Any permanent right of way ban and modification, we would bring to council for consideration.
And I'm not incredibly familiar with what that process looks like, although I know that process has occurred before with other construction projects that came in, asked for modifications of right-of-way issues, parking changes and things like that. So I know it's been done, not familiar with exactly how that works.
So are you saying it's independent, they're independent, or would the traffic situation have to be approved before the planning of the building can come through?
In order to do any planning review process with planning commission and the board council, we're going to need those details for that submittal. However, any kind of modification to a right of way that's permanent, particularly in a case like this where we'd be essentially ceding parking or actually right of way, would need to come to council for some type of action.
So if it didn't have one of those, a permanent change, it wouldn't come to council?
Well, because of the initiative, now we have a different scenario on hand with the conditional use, if in fact council chooses to go that road, or whether it ends up in an election. There's just a lot of uncertainty in terms of both timing and process, in terms of what we have going on. What I would be super cautious of those major investment in significant design before we have, particularly if we go to a conditional use situation, we need to have that reviewed at a proper level of conceptual before it starts moving into commitments on hard design and significant investment.
Sure. So moving from conceptual to actual, essentially.
And the first part of your question, I'd like to address that as well. So I think you're absolutely right that I'm saying to you that I think there's a 2-year window for there to be more decision-making, more studies, more everything. What has to happen first is that I have to get site plan approval so that I can start down the path of replacing the fire station part. And with that being a contiguous piece of property, my understanding is that I have to get site plan approval for the whole project, even just to start a part of that project. And
Okay.
so what the caveat seems to be here is that the $132,000 for the design portion of this, I have to at least get to the point where I can satisfy the needs of the community development department to get approval of the site plan before I can start on the carriage house project, which is disinclusive of really any involvement of the historic building, which would be the one that the police department would be in. But it is all on one piece of property now. So I can't get the site plan done unless I'm locked into both. And depending on what that process ends up looking like, I have been told that I have to be able to come to the table with a design and the internal use. So the occupancy types of what's going to be in that to get that site plan approval. And so what the reason that this meeting was so critical for us is that what I'm saying to you is that to move forward with the option, I need the commitment of $132,000 risk in order to be able to design this to get to the point where I can make that submittal to move forward. If that is an untenable risk for you at this point, then I need to find someone else to occupy that space so that I can satisfy the design needs of getting the major site plan review done so that I can move forward with the fire station part. It's incredibly complicated, and
It is. I see it.
but
Yeah,
it is the
we're running
process.
a cost share agreement with the city stuff where we can come in and we say, we want to continue seeing this. We're willing to do the, $132,000 on the basis that like, it gets built as a police station, but if it doesn't, if you don't make it through planning, if you can't do this, we gonna.
Can I just really quickly make a statement? 5 years ago, Hal helped me, 4 years ago, we had the train station site picked out. City council asked us to do a complete design mock-up of what the building was gonna look like. We spent 40 grand. Am I in the ballpark?
Yep.
$40,000 to put that design together and then got shot down.
Mhm.
And as I sit here, and I apologize if my body language is not good. As I sit here, we talk about we're a partnership.
Right.
And what I'm hearing is that and I understand the fiscal part for you guys. You're held responsible, so are we.
Mhm.
The problem that I've got is, guys, we've got an opportunity on the table
Mhm.
that can save the city of Durango a ton of money. Hands down, no matter what you do, if you choose to support your police station down the road, which I think you're going to have to, there's a ton of money that can be saved here. I believe $132,000 is a drop in the bucket in the grand scheme of things. So I apologize. I just wanted to put that out there.
Appreciate it.
Great. To Councilor Buell's question, maybe Jose is knowing, have we done any other arrangements similar? I appreciate, first of all, let me say, I appreciate your view and the history of the partnership. I just wanted to also get an opportunity for the question to be answered.
Sorry for interrupting.
No problem. No.
I don't disagree with you either.
Yeah.
And I know that was hard and I understand that, but we're just, right now, especially with this community initiative going on, we just need to make sure.
Understand.
That, yeah,
Absolutely.
I want you, again, I want you to feel supported, but also.
Yeah.
What are our options?
So on a cost share agreement, I can't say specifically if we've ever done one here like that. I can tell you that I've had those conversations with Al in regards to, is there an ability for us to receive our money back in regards to if we decide that we don't go forward with these other areas that are there. We didn't really come to a decision point, and be unfair to put Al in that position to say, hey, where are you at right now? But we've had those discussions, and I would assume that even after this meeting, if we go, come back and talk to the council, part of that would be more conversations that I would have with Al to discuss what are those options if something like that were to happen.
And the reason that I'm here, this will lead you down the path that I'm on. The reason that I'm here proposing this to you is because if I design this to be a police station and then you guys decide that you're going to pull out, then I've paid the $132,000 and then I would have to pay again to redesign that space to be something else.
Not pull out, so I think there's a difference between us pulling out and it not working. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like you're not getting through planning or, but then there's also like, what's the question of like, what date do you say for Gateway City? I'm going with X company because they're giving me $132,000 right now to make it into whatever.
Yeah, I'm so committed to this idea and thinking that it's the right thing for our community. I don't want to put you into an unfair situation where I've provided you an ultimatum with a date. At some point, we're going to have to say, look, unless we can get to the point where we submit this thing and see if we can get it approved, we won't ever know. And then what do we, I mean, that's all the while, the men and women that work for me are in the conditions that they're in. And I don't think that that's fair either. So I recognize that this is a tough political decision for you. It's a tough fiscal decision for you. It's a tough philosophical decision. I'm in the same boat, this is what I think about at 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning when I can't sleep is how do I propose this to you in a way where you can share the same vision that we have for this? How do we get the community to see this opportunity? But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what I believe. What it matters is what you believe. And I'm asking you to help us down the road of this. But at the point that we're at, in order for me to commission my architect, who is, Tracy Reynolds is probably sitting at his desk with his pencil in hand, waiting for a phone call so that he can start drawing his plan. that portion that we've designated as potentially for the police department is going to cost us $132,892 to draw. And I believe that the right thing to do is say, that's what you're risking by saying we are still committed to moving down this road and partnering with us. If that's untenable, then I think that we're at a decision point.
I'm going to open up for more questions.
I
Councilor
agree.
Baxter and then Councilor Bosman's, do you have
I
questions?
think part of the challenge is that it's not just the $132,000 for designing. But as a city and to our fiduciary responsibility, we have to look at other options.
Sure.
And so no matter whether we do the $132,000 for the design or not, we have to look and see, is this the best choice for us?
Sure.
Right.
So it's not just 132,000. This whole thing is going to take some research dollars and some study dollars and some figuring out, is this really the best option for us? And is this, where does the money come from if that's the choice? And where does the money come from if it's not the choice? And so it's not just one thing. It's a multitude of things. That's just so you are aware of that. It's not one-
totally.
It's not one.
Yeah, no, I'm tracking on that. And my understanding is that at a previous meeting, I believe a work session, you directed your police chief to do some studies for that. I think that study's been done. It's my
No.
understanding is that
Now, studies have been done, we've had conversations of, I think what we look at is what are some estimates that we could get for construction costs for other facilities. But I believe what Councilor Baxter is referring to is actually having a study that, as professionals, going in, if you were to locate this police station, where would it go? Would this location here be the opportune place for it to be? Specifically, we look at response times and things and how that works and going through. If I'm hearing you right, I think the studies that she's going through are more than just what are current construction prices out there right now.
okay. So how do you see that going from a time frame standpoint?
Well, that's why I brought up the question about the 2 years. I don't know what amount of time that takes, but I think that there's a good example out there with the sheriff's department. And I think that we should look at that, which I've mentioned before. And we have a building, and there are certain locations that we could use for that too. And that might actually even be a better combination of the police department and fire department than this building is. So I feel like we were rushed into this, and I feel like we're being rushed into it. And that's where I'm uncomfortable. You know, when you and I talked about the River City Hall building originally, you asked if the city would be willing to give you that property. And I said, I don't think that's probably the direction we would go. That's the only conversation that we had about that. And so this is a totally different scenario. You bought a piece of property for a significant amount of money. Well, maybe buying that other piece of property might have been the way to go instead of asking the city to give it to you. So I'm just concerned, and I don't have the certainty that you do.
I'm glad to have that still on the table. Will you sell me River City Hall?
Right.
I don't think this is this
Yeah.
is not the point of
Yeah.
the discussion today. This is not the point of the discussion today. And so I want to keep it on the focus of the 2 agenda items for today. And I also want to open it up to, I know Councilor Bosman hasn't spoken yet. And I believe Councilor Youssef may also have some more questions. And I also know that Patty wants to make a point.
And I do too.
Okay. And I have some questions, so I'd like to.
First of all, thank you for the update and the presentation. I think, I personally think you're not rushed. I think you've been put in a position that it's taken forever to find even an option that you can consider. And when that opportunity came along, fire district took the decision to pursue it. I think we need to continue exploring that option. And all aspects, every direction, the initiative is just as important as you being able to do the design. And as a city, I think we have the responsibility not just to make sure that you have an opportunity to explore it, but also for the police department. Because if they are going through the same process of not hurry, but taking 20 years to replace their building, we're not doing a good job to our community. And I think that is a lot due to the council's decision making or lack thereof. So I would love to see the next steps take place in every direction. So that means your design for the police department aspect of it. That means us evaluating and seeing how the initiative takes place and how that plays out. And then maybe even from Kevin, the option to separate the carriage building from the main building, if there's any opportunity to separate those two so that you're not dependent on council and their commitment to proceed addressing your personnel and emergency service needs. And I would like to see if we can put something on the agenda for not tomorrow or today, sorry, but in the next 2 weeks for that first step to move this little element of the whole package forward. Let's see. Yeah, that's my comments.
Thank you.
We're getting all the ones I was going to bring up.
Yeah.
Counselor Youssef, did you have something else to say?
It was just back to, again, to, some questions on timing. And Counselor Bosman's just brought forward, his suggestion of 2 weeks. I guess that we don't make decisions in this environment. So I guess that's kind of what I wanted to know is about, I was going to ask you kind of about that timing, like when you are needing, when can we get together and have this conversation again and continue the conversations.
Yeah.
I also am interested in continuing the conversations in light of all of the things that have been brought up today.
I will make my schedule available to you and be at any meeting that you wish for me to be at, to answer questions, to provide more input, to sit there and shut up and listen to what you guys have to say. However you need that to go out, I'll be there for that. I am willing to carry this concept forward if I can assure that we're not going to, in the wake of having lost $40,000 the last time that we did this. And I'll remind you, some of the same people that want money for your convention center now are the people that stopped this the last time, so that there could be a convention center on an acre and a half of land that was designed to be a fire department.
Right.
And it's a gravel lot today.
Right.
So and that's not a shot at them. I'm just saying that as we move forward, one of our responsibilities as staff members in careers for the city and for the fire department and in elected official positions is that I believe that our public elected all of you into positions to make decisions about how to protect them.
Yeah.
And I've always said that. If you are willing to put $132,000 at risk, I will have my architect start down the road of doing this and open that 2-year window for you to decide if this is the best way for you to go and provide you a guarantee that there are more off-ramps moving forward should you choose to utilize them. That's the way that you can make a decision that will still keep this opportunity open to you and will move us down the road further with our opportunity to negotiate whatever it is that we're going to need to do next through community forums, through giving opportunities for people to weigh in on design features for this, and to get to the point where I can work with Kevin's staff to submit a finished site plan that lets you know exactly what it is we're doing, hopefully with the goal of getting to the point of approval so that I can get us there.
Just a point of clarification, because I don't want to interrupt.
Yeah, I was
you
going to
more, and
clarify
I'd love to
too.
hear from our mayor too. You said 132, that cost, but that's split, correct?
No,
No, that's the
just
city's
for the-
portion. That's
Just the police. Thank
yes.
you. Okay.
The cost for me is a great deal more than that because
Okay.
it seems that what my architect has done is made this portion of it as cheap as possible and delivered a great deal of the cost for the total project on the carriage house portion. So the portion for the fire district is a great deal more than what it is that I'm representing to you here.
Okay.
great.
This is the city's portion for the police square footage section and half of the shared space to get us from the concept part that's finished to basically all the construction documents are drawn and it could be placed into the hands of a general contractor to bid the thing to get us the guaranteed maximum price.
So thank you. I'm going to turn to Kim. Then I would like to ask some, well, I was going to ask if you have some questions, Patty, or more of a statement, because I wanted to. Okay, perfect. So I'm going to go to Patty, Kim. I would like to ask some questions. Is this questions or a statement?
Both.
I'll turn to you and then I'll end up if my questions haven't been asked. And then if we still have more, we'll keep going, but I wanted to let people know the order that we'll be going in. Kim. Oh, Patty, sorry.
So my question, I have several questions. One is, I know we've talked about fiscal responsibility and the petition. And I have some concerns that there's $38,000 that may be committed, spent by the city because of the petition, that at least the sign that was in the newspaper had one of the bullets as Save Buckley Park. And I think everyone in this room knows that Buckley Park is owned by the school district. It is not part of the fire department's project, but there continues to be the pounding of Save Buckley 9R. So my question is, as we look at fiscally being responsible, I'm wondering if there's any concern about a little bit of manipulation of information of the facts in getting those people to sign that petition, because that's unfair.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's my question, is you all are talking and I understand the city clerk will look at all that. And I also can tell you, this is a statement. I know I just said I got some questions, but I looked at the last petition that was done around the holidays, and more than half of them were out of our county. They were, and I get it, if I wanted to, well, yeah. So just so you know, there's been some issues that haven't been exactly truth in advertising, is what I would call it, that have been done that I think has hurt this process, has hurt everybody's reputation, because people don't want you all to sell Buckley Park. And it's not yours to sell. It's not ours to sell. But that has been put on us as the fire department board and you as the city council. And that is unfair to all the people that have done that.
Thank you, Patty. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm going to turn to Kim.
So you basically answered my question, but the design cost. So you're saying that goes from conceptual to actual construction ready or construction bid ready documents, like where the water lines go, where the electricity goes, this concrete requirements, everything. I mean, it'll be everything, every detail, because design means different things to different people. So it would be from soup to nuts, essentially, in order for us to be able to put that out to bid to get a price. It's absolutely everything.
Yeah, no.
It's absolutely what the architect services are. Absolutely everything is a big question, right? I mean, I'm in the throes of a significantly expensive traffic plan study and all that. But this is the part that I will not move forward without the commitment from you guys to have sticks.
How about if we get some detail and a commitment from the architect about what exactly design drawings means?
Right.
Because otherwise we don't know what we're paying for.
Yeah, I think that's a fair ask. And I think that Tracy actually has already done all that work, although I don't have that answer to put in front of you right now. But I think that we can get that on a very quick turnaround and be able to hand that to you, an itemized list of what all that includes.
So, okay. Kathy's going to switch sides with me. Hal, first of all, thank you. And thanks to the board coming in. I think the concept of design, it's important to understand, because when we hear design concept, we're told 10%, typically 10% of the ultimate construction cost you're going to spend on design. So when you say 132,000, I'm like, wow, that's really inexpensive for what we always hear, I would have expected $1 million for a $10 million portion, whatever. So that's where I think it's important to understand what exactly it is that is the outcome here. That's one. Second is, and to that point, I think there is some need to say, because is it a little bit more pictures, and then there's going to be all the detail later, and that's going to be even more. So I think we need to look at that. I have a question about the timing. You said, Tracy's ready with his pencil. If there was this consensus to go forward, which would not be determined today, approximately how long do you think it would take to actually get that document back for us all to see? That's a question. I have another question beyond that.
Yeah, I apologize, but I don't have a good answer for that.
Okay.
I could ask Tracy to provide me a timeline for that. I think that, we've intentionally held him up at the work that's been done currently because, like you, I don't want to incur expenses that aren't, but I have to incur expenses to get to the point where I can submit for this,
Right.
which I think is our next major goal to get to is be able to deliver the product and see if we've been able to check all the boxes that are
Okay.
required. So allow me the opportunity to get you an answer for that. And when next we speak, I'll have that answer. And as soon as I get it, I'll be in contact with Jose so that he can represent that to you.
Great. My next question is is a two-part for it. It may involve the city manager as well. We asked as a council that you give us, you provide us, the staff, a sense of the benefits of this partnership, but also I believe we asked any other alternative, whether it would be a new site, whether it would be a renovated site. So it might seem, at least in my original thinking, that we actually need to set aside a pot of money for different streams, right? Which might be a stream of looking at what the benefit of this partnership would be. What would it take to look at a second as an alternative? And I'm not proposing this. It just seems to me that as part of our fiscal responsibility, we need to look at different options. And so the concern though is that you recognize the city might, if it went this way, you might recognize the city's willing to look at this option, but it is in no way, shape, or form married to this option because it has a responsibility to explore, is there any other renovation that could take place that could suit this? That's a question, I guess I'm putting it, is that a plausible way of thinking, not only for the city manager to work on, but to ask of my fellow councilors?
Yeah, yes, I mean, absolutely, I do believe it's a plausible way of thinking it. When we did come to the council, it was to talk about the financial feasibility in regards to what this project would cost as compared to your renovation, as compared to what we were going to do if we found another site and went through it. The difficult part is it's hard to do the feasibility if I don't know what this is going to cost me. So how can I compare those areas? And so that's what we were trying to wait to see what that number would get to, where we're in that design cost, which still goes back to that. In order to do that feasibility, I need to know what that project is going to look like to cost. Going from architectural design drawings into construction, many times I've been there and projects have hidden costs, things that they draw. I know Tracy's amazing, so nothing about him, but an engineer comes in and says, yeah, that's not possible. And next thing you know, it's another 20% that gets added onto it. So I really am trying to, excuse me, when I get to that part, really get what is that construction cost, but it's absolutely plausible to what you were thinking. Staff is working on that part of that big domino is to find out what this cost is going to be. I was just talking with Chief Bremer on Montrose, and he told me that Montrose PD is in the middle of a 35,000 square foot build. Their cost was 16.2 million, and now they're having a 30% increase in their materials.
Right. Right.
So right now we're in a world that things are changing rapidly and prices are going up. So there's that part of that fiduciary responsibility and making sure that we're aware of what are the costs when the construction goes through, asking those materials, getting those contractors. I hear that's the cost today, but is there a chance that this is continuously going up? What do we see on those parts? It's a lot of moving parts regards to looking at a design. That's usually why quite frankly, I think Chief Gotti brought it out, is takes a bit, it takes time to kind of look into it, to commit to it, to understand to it. And all of that would definitely be part of the feasibility analysis.
And then I have another question. Thank you, Jose. You supported Councillor Bosman's comments about splitting the property, and I'm wondering, is that something that you are interested in approaching the city to actually separate the carriage house from the main building? Is that on your potential agenda for a way to address the staging of this?
So again, I'm at,
And I wanted to hear from Kevin
Yeah.
on what would be involved with that.
sure, I'm a bit limited by the fact that if your house is on fire, I'm the guy you need.
Right, understood.
If you're answering specific questions about finance and things like that, I'm not an expert at this.
No.
But in my latest conversation, and Kathy was party to this, was a Zoom conference with our finance consultant group, which is Hilltop Securities, which I think you guys are familiar with. You've used them in the past for consulting or for projects. And I find that their suggestion and recommendation was that in order to finance the Apparatus Bay building separately from the remodel of the historic building, there needs to be a design line that is designated. That can be just on paper as a part of the management of two projects that exist on one piece of property, as opposed to going through a subdivision process in which we would formalize that subdivision between the two. My thinking and the advice that I've gotten from both legal counsel as well as our finance consultants is that we should do it that way rather than doing a formal subdivision
Okay,
process,
thank you.
which, as we're aware from the subdivision process that occurred for separating Buckley Park from this property, can get very complicated as well. Their suggestion is, while you own the full piece of property, create the line so that it can be financed separately, but don't go through the subdivision process unless you get to the point where you have to divest yourself of one or the other of those pieces of
Okay,
real estate.
thank you. Kevin, did you have anything to add to that?
Well, I would like to add a little bit in that certainly I haven't seen the scope of services on the design work that we're talking about, that number 4. However, in terms of the development review process, we're talking about a conceptual level submittal that we would review first. And with all development in the community, the reason it's set up that way is to limit your costs up front. So, we have a site plan. We know what the final uses of the property would be. We'd be able to identify what the major impacts on the neighborhood are. We move forward. We certainly don't need to know what the cost of the wiring in the wall is going to be to do that.
Right.
So there may be that this 132 is all in, but in terms of getting through a review process, which in my mind is that you have a couple of different questions to answer here. One is obviously, do you want to partner in this? The other question though is this going to be approved as a use on the site? Under allowable use, it's one scenario. If council chooses to act on the initiative one way or the other, and let's just say it ends up as a CUP, that's a little bit of a different process. Then you're talking about, is this the right site? As opposed to just looking at the use and we'll call it a major site plan. But in terms of conceptual level review and approval process, then you move into a preliminary, and that's when you start getting into the expenses, because you already have some level of approval. You're feeling pretty good about it. Now you start spending money. So there's phasing on all of this. Similarly to the question that was just being discussed about splitting the parcel. Either way, we're going to ask for what is the full intended use of that site in order to move forward. And I think that's where Al's looking for some guidance. Is it a PD or is it something else? I suppose we could review it in a manner that is, what's the most impactful use of the partnership, whether it's PD or some other law enforcement or education.
Right.
And we can do a review process at a conceptual level that wouldn't require that full design.
Thank you, Kevin. I just want to clarify. there was a suggestion made to do it, and what I'm hearing is that's not the best option for you at this time, is to split this parcel.
Sorry to, yeah.
So I wanted to
go-
clarify that because I didn't want it to be, we have a suggestion on the table and we're not, I wanted to hear your view
Yeah.
of
The,
that.
the advice that I've gotten so far, and this is Hal talking about advice that I've gotten that has not been brought to my board yet, so they're hearing of this and answering this question the first time as well, but is that I don't need to go through the formal subdivision process in order to make the money part work or the
Okay.
project work. So their suggestion was probably don't go through that at this point, which would be my recommendation to my board.
Great. I wanted to hear that. Other comments from people?
I think still a bit confusing if you could get, I'm not asking a question. If this is one site, not separate, is it possible to go through the whole process, 2 sections of it, individually developed, or is that not possible?
Knowing what we know today, we would want a full, both, whether it's 2 parcels or 1, we're gonna need to understand what the full use of the 2 sites are. It's clear it's not a completely separate land use, it's an integrated land use. It just so happens you want to do a phased approach, so we would have a phasing of the conceptual plan, but we'd want to know what the full intent was. It's the only way you can review it.
Is the use, partial use of the main building as a police department any different than another healthcare service, emergency service?
Yeah.
Or do you need to have, what level of detail that you like to see that?
Well, and yeah, so we would need to understand kind of the most impactful potential use. For instance, if it's an education, maybe it's a school versus a PD, those are 2 different uses. We're going to need to know what those are. We could move forward on conceptual to preliminary on one piece of that, but we need to know what the big picture is, so we know what the site plan is, what the full impacts on the neighborhood are.
Given all the work you've done on this conceptual plan that currently exists, is that enough information to go to a conceptual plan review?
I don't know.
That's a good question.
Because
The
if
way
it
Kevin's-
is,
yeah.
then we could go through that
Yeah.
process
Right.
first and have a better idea of the direction that this could go to
The-
make better decisions.
Right, the way Kevin's just explained it was, it is a bit different from what my understanding walking into this meeting was. And so I'd like the opportunity to look into that and maybe meet with his staff and talk about what are the minimum amount of caveats that we need to put forward in order to get to the point where we could get an initial
Mhm.
deal. We've met, I believe, either 2 or 3 times formally, kind of with a large contingent of his staff, talking about these things already. If that's a possibility, but because like you, I don't want to spend any money that I don't have to spend if it's not going to get approved.
Well, the reason why I ask it is
Right.
because oftentimes we have some very simple conceptual plans that come to council for approval on projects as well as through the planning commission. So is
Yeah,
that a
the
possibility?
Conceptual plan, we need to understand impacts. What do you want to do with the road system?
Yep.
What does the traffic study look like? What does the site plan look like? What's the ultimate maximum use of the site? So
Yeah.
maybe you use the PD as the example, but then you fall back into a lesser impactful use, which allows us to get through the planning commission CUP process or allowable use process. Either way, it's a major site plan review, but it, with the exception of the road issues, it stays with the PC under CUP or allowable use unless the PC chooses to defer it or the applicant, in this case, DFP, doesn't like the answer they get from PC.
Well, maybe one of the things to consider in the next week or so is what would it take to get to that conceptual plan? Sounds like the traffic study is required for that, but is there anything else that it wouldn't go, too far into too much money to create? Because that could give us some really good answers.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, having that be an opportunity, I would say that I'd be interested in fully exercising that. Trying to meet with Kevin's staff again as quickly as we could pull that together to get what are the minimum amount of opportunity, pieces of information that we need in order to get to that point and go through that process.
Well, if you're
It might
2
be
weeks out on,
hundreds of dollars versus
Yeah.
hundreds of thousands.
Yeah.
if you're 2 weeks out on the SEH traffic study, seemed like that'd be a really good time to come and actually have a formal pre-application, which we haven't done. We've had some informal meetings months and months ago, but I think
Right.
things are evolving. So once we have that information, it'd be a good time to have the pre-application.
Yeah, that sounds like something that would be really worthwhile to move forward with. I would say that probably that, I mean, it's already been spoken out here, but probably the greatest impact that everybody, I think, sees as the thing that may be the stopping point on this is the traffic. You know, what are our answers as far as the traffic goes, and what are our answers as far as parking goes? We've been very careful in our design concepts to design solutions that end up yielding viable thoroughfare for adequately sized for trucks and other things to get through on 12th Street, and to only support a parking recommendation or structure that adds to the net parking places available in the community. I mean, those two things seem like absolute stopping points. So they've been super high priorities on our list of the way that we've worked to design what we think is going to be the site plan that we'll come forward with.
I have a question. Oh, go ahead.
I haven't seen the request for financial cost sharing and parking study. Is that something that you would bring to us as well? at a certain point?
So I have to do that whether you're my partner or not.
No,
So we took it upon ourselves to do that. If when we get to the point where we have that final meeting, when you guys have made the great decision of supporting this, and we're moving in together as a police department and a fire department in Durango's new emergency service center, then we'll work through, hey, these are the total costs, this is the deal. I think that happens at the point where we start talking about guaranteed maximum price and what you're finally committing to and we're finally committing to. But there are some things that I can't move forward without, and I've held off on coming to you with this ask for as long as I possibly can to get to the point where I've done everything else that I can do. And so is the traffic study a part of the total project cost? Yes, it is. What portion of that is yours? Well, it's a percentage of the less expensive of the two buildings that we're trying to design on this site. So a small percentage would be, cast toward the design and concept costs on a guaranteed maximum price for you. But I would have to do this anyway if I were designing the other half to be a bubblegum factory. So
I'm gonna jump in. You have a question?
Yeah, after you.
Okay, thank you. On the traffic issues, I just want to clarify. The city is engaged in a study that's looking at what, 13th, 14th Street? It does not include 12th Street. Is that correct? I'm looking, Councilor Bosman, you're the liaison to multimodal. So okay.
May I answer that with what my knowledge of that is?
Well, because my question, where I was going to go with that is that I don't know the timing of when that's to be completed. But even if it's, 13th, it's going to affect some of your design issues. So I wanted to make the point that there was at least some conversation between the two groups of what that looks like and what the possible solutions are around that. And I don't know the timing for when that will be presented. So I wanted to just put that out there, and then I'll refer to Alyssa. Thank you.
You bet, absolutely. Thank you. I think we've had some good discussion here. Really appreciate that we're doing this publicly and getting these conversations out and bringing some of these issues to the table, and a little pass for moving forward. But another kind of question, not to take us off task on this project, because I'm hearing kind of some plans for potentially moving forward and continuing to explore with this. Clearly, council needs to meet again to discuss this further. But one more question is also, as we simultaneously continue to move forward on this, are you still open to the conversation of considering any other possible location and or lot that may come up as we review this, knowing that you need a place and you need a place fast?
Yeah.
And the issue is any, not a specific.
I'm just, I just want to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, sure. I think being a man in my position would be stupid to say no to that. I think that absolutely, if we get to the point where this project can't go, I think that we are, I very much appreciated the door that you opened at either the last joint meeting or the one before that, where you said, we understand that you're on this track, you're moving forward with this, da, 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 da. If this doesn't work out, we're still open to exploring other opportunities and options. I would say to you that, I think that we are a long way down this road, and we've invested a good bit of money in moving forward with this, right? And by a good bit of money, I mean a bigger check than I've ever signed my name to
Right.
before, right? So, I would say that this is still our A plan. Although if you guys are saying to me, just give us an offer and we'll consider selling you River City Hall, you'd probably get that offer if you wanted to cast me that opportunity.
I want to clarify that the question was any property, not a specific property. We're not
Too
in
bad.
discussions.
I know. And that's your conditions and my conditions are different than those, right? But I would say to you that I think that I've got a feasible piece of property that's where we need it to be for this community, that is big enough to support both the fire department and police department, that we've hired an architect who's shown us that we have an ample opportunity to fit both of us in there and to serve the community well. And I feel strongly compelled, as I've expressed to my board and they've supported, that we should move forward doing everything we can to develop this use on this property. But if I get told no, I still need to replace my police department, my fire department and my police department, chief.
So I'm going to move to Kathy, who has a question. I'm also going to do like a last call for questions from counselors and then open up to any statements from the fire district board. Everybody comfortable with that?
Thank you,
Okay.
Mayor. Council Youssef, thank you for your comment about other locations. So Kim, you had mentioned that there was an opportunity or could be other properties that you were potentially thinking about that you own. So you made reference to the sheriff's department, which they got the armory. And you're right, it's a beautiful property. And what Sean did with that was amazing. So I'm curious, do you have other properties that you're looking at
Any property in our system is possible.
that would house both of us in a location where we can serve our community?
So we are not, and my understanding is that we're not looking at it as a joint facility. But to the point of the Camino and College property, I don't see why that couldn't be a part of the conversation as a joint property. It's large.
As a
enough,
joint
I believe.
property.
But the problem for me is that we haven't had those discussions because we weren't involved in any of those discussions. We weren't asked to discuss. So we haven't been able to, as a council, even discuss that, much less than say, yeah, let's all get together and figure out where is actually the best site. Yes, maybe the 9R School District Historic Building is one of those, but are there others? And what is truly best for everybody? Not just saying this is one site, so we're going to go with that, because there may be others.
Thank you. So we are clearly at a pinch point. We've been doing this for over 30 years, not me, but previous boards, your previous boards. And we recognize that once, our terms are up, we have new people come on board, things get changed, or the can gets kicked down the road. And we feel very strongly, morally responsible as elected officials to serve the community for public safety, that we've got to move this forward. That's why we're kind of leaning in on this. That's why we took the move that we took. The men and women that serve this community are in horrible conditions. I can't stress that enough. If you don't know about it, go look at it. So we're kind of like, we need your help. And we're here extending a hand to say, what can you do to help our community as elected officials? They expect it from us. So we have to be courageous risk takers. We took risk as a board and moved forward on this property. We had to, because it's the people we serve for all of us. So I got to say, I'm only here for a few more weeks because my term is up. But we have been working with our new board as a succession plan so we can make sure that the work continues. They'll have their ideas and their agendas, if you will, but they understand coming into this, the plan, how we're moving forward for the membership and as elected officials for our community.
Thank you, Kathy. Any other comments from the Fire District Board?
I think that appreciate the time that we've done today. It's interesting to be able to hear new concepts. I apologize to you that you got blindsided on a conceptual thing at this stage of the game. I'm somewhat, shouldn't say disappointed, but it surprises me that this has been going on for months now. And you turn around, you make a comment that we don't have, well, we need to look at other opportunities. This would have been, as much as we've been through in the last couple of months, more specifically you all as a council, it's almost like you would have said, you know what, take some of the pressure off of me. What do you think about this? And you guys run with this, and here's an opportunity for you to make something bigger and better. Because for clarification, it wasn't necessarily, you know, I support Chief Dowdy in the fact that if it's better to separate it,
Right.
and we've had all these conversations, it's what's best to make this move forward. What I was actually supporting was the recognition of the fact that that facility, it would not pass any of our inspections. We could walk into that building right now and occupy it because of the fact that city, fire, everybody would say, nope, it's not feasible. But we have people living in there 48-hour shifts that live that environment every day. And it's okay. It's only been that way for 30 years. Why would we want to change it now? Because we have the opportunity to change it now for something bigger, better, nicer, more feasible, more functional, more efficient. I totally get, I totally understand the fiscal responsibility and the emotional attachments and all the things that have been going on right now. But with that all being said, if you as a council directed the city manager to investigate a police station opportunities days, weeks, months, whatever, years ago, that we're still, I don't know yet, we're still waiting. I don't think that's being responsible. I think that's a situation where we're just, it was my line, kicking the can down the road. Former councils, people standing up going, no, that's not right. You had the opportunity 28 years ago, or 25 years ago, or 10 years ago. And I know and I'm coming off the board too. I've been there, done that, and I totally understand and I get it. With all that being said, I appreciate the time. I appreciate the conversation. I really hope that we're not stonewalling it from the standpoint out of spite. What I really hope is that we're looking for what's best for Durango, Colorado, and La Plata County. And as we're doing that, we're not looking for duplicate facilities. We all been down this path too. The college experience is we have to have a rec center up there so we can have a rec center down here. We have to have this facility up here so we can do that down there. Why not just do bigger and better with shared responsibilities?
Correct.
So,
Thank you.
again.
Thank you, Nate.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, I just want to acknowledge your comment and
Right.
thank you for it. And also just suggest that I too want to solve this problem. And my reason for bringing up, would you consider additional alternatives, is if anywhere along this process, I mean, I recognize you guys own a property right now and it was a substantial investment and you guys made that decision. And so here we are today in that scenario. My desire is to solve the problem for the community going forward and for the fire department and ultimately as well, the police department, but they could be two separate issues or they could be a combined issue. I am in favor of a combined issue if it works. I understand the benefits of shared resources. It sounds like it would work well in that partnership, but I bring that up only because I do, if we come to this solution where something happens and it's untenable and it doesn't work, we need to find an alternative. So we have to keep all the discussions open. We have to solve this problem. Like, I've been on council now for 5 years. I too have been through one that didn't work. And now here we are in a second. So you guys are leaving your board positions, but just so you know, I'm still on council for 3 years. I want to solve this problem as well. And it's not over my jurisdiction, the fire department, but I want to help.
I also would like to make a
Bring
comment.
that forward.
If I may, I just think unless anybody else has something, I'd like to end with a comment.
Can I just?
Please,
quickly-
because I'm also keeping
I
my own
am
time.
kind of just reiterating what was just said. I'm so done, and I'm also coming off after 10 years. I just want to make sure that everybody understands, one, time is of the essence. We are putting our firefighters and paramedics in harm's way in the conditions that they're in. I have not been through the police station, but from what I hear, it's just as bad. I'm so done with the abstract of let's look at more locations. We've been doing this for 8 to 10 years in my timeline. Every single time we come up with another location, somebody else has another set of issues. There's going to be issues that we have to work through no matter what. And I believe in the 10 years, I said to the chief not that long ago, I was infuriated when we lost the train site. I felt like it was the perfect site. Now here we are 4 years later. This is a much better site and it can be multi-used. We have done our due diligence. So if we're going to look at any other sites, it needs to be a quick snapshot. And if it doesn't work, we need to move on from it.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate that.
May I say something?
Yes, and I believe Jessica got to me. I've got to go with Jessica, then Councilor Olivier, and then on to Kim. Do you have anything?
Just to be clear, like, I don't want to jump off right now, like, I don't want to lose this opportunity. However, I think there's a few things that we've talked about that we need. We need to know that 133,000 design costs, is it all inclusive to 100% construction costs? Is it DD, is it CD, is it SD, like what is it exactly? I would like to know some opportunities on a cost share agreement and an ownership policy options, like what that looks like specifically, not just like there, but like what? And then the cost of renovating our current police station potentially, and the cost of maybe building a new police station potentially, so we can compare it all around. Like, I think before we make a full decision of like, here it is, $30,000, I need to know more about those things. But I don't want this opportunity to slip through our fingers, so that also needs to be there.
Can I clarify your statement there?
Yeah.
Just if I may. They're talking about some urgency to have us partner. What you may be saying you need could take much longer.
No,
So I want to clarify.
But there has to be a balance, right? It's not like I'm saying I have to have all of that in order to say yes or no, but
Okay.
I would like more information on those items.
Concurrently, but not,
Yes.
you don't have to have the full package until you reach a decision. I wanted to clarify that for you, Al.
So in the marvels of modern technology, I've been communicated with since last I spoke about this. And the architect has confirmed that this number gets us to the point where we can provide the guaranteed maximum price. That's the architecture costs to you to get to the point where then you get that major off ramp at the right, that where the highway forks, right? Yes or no for the whole thing. So I feel confident.
It's not 100% construction documents, but it's to the G.
Correct.
That's
So no, I think it is 100% construction documents. What it doesn't yet include is the percentage amount, which I think is 25% of the total cost of all the thing. The final 25% is, so we did concept, then we got all the design work and putting it all into plans. Then we've got the construction management portion, so
Sure.
that the contractor can go to the architect and say, we don't understand how you wanted this wall built. What do you need us to do here with it? So that's the last part after this from the architect's charges that we would incur. But this number, according to him today, gets us to where we cast the guaranteed maximum price. And you know what it is you're committing to spending to.
And then last, thank you for your service.
Oh,
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Oh,
Thank you.
If I could just
Yes.
add one
Yes,
part
please.
there.
Thank
I
you.
think it's an important part, because we haven't really touched upon it. from a city perspective, we don't have $9 million.
Right, I know.
So even if it gets to 10, 12, we don't have that cash. We're doing much better in our general fund. We're past the 25%, which is a really great thing that we've been able to make those strides, but it still doesn't get us not even, I don't know, I'm not gonna estimate it.
But there was-
Well, and cash may not be the.
There was the mention of a loan,
Absolutely.
right,
So, but what I'm trying to say is we don't have a plan.
right, understood.
And that means, could possibly mean debt, it could possibly mean lease. I know that Hal has said that there's possibilities of funding through the fire district, but we have Tabor, we have financial analysis that we have to do with it, so I understand the need for necessity for hurry, but I also want to lay out the part of, we don't have it right now in the city. You had a construction cost of, let's call it 10 million. I don't know where I would get that without having to go through some parts where I have to talk about. We may have to debt it. If we do, what does that look like in Tabor? Do we have to go out to an election? It's a little more complex for our side in regards to raising that cash. And so I just wanted to make sure that that's.
Great. Thank you. Olivier.
Yeah, I'm gonna echo a lot what Jessica said. I think you have after many years grasped an opportunity, and I want to make sure that you have the opportunity to pursue that. So that would be that conceptual design process as far as you can. I think parallel, all of this should go in parallel because we are 30 years or 20 years further, and we still have to do with these departments building. Parallel, I think we, since you clarified the 132,000, we should probably schedule as soon as possible a meeting at the council to discuss that topic and at least have the opportunity to pursue that further, so you have clarity and we can go on that level further. Financially, I tend to disagree. I believe we have quite a huge sum of money at the city, about 70 or 80 million, but these are all allocated funds, so we don't have access to it. And the points are very good. Is how we finance if this moves that out. The city police department part is that other forms. So it's definitely something that we probably also should start evaluating at a high level at the city level and council. Parallel, I think we need to be very cognizant of the initiative and all the community concerns that have been raised, and that will also move parallel. But I think all of these things should move forward, so we don't lose people leaving boards, councils, and then have a whole different situation. And I also agree with Melissa, where she brought up the additional sites. You should have back with ours. And one of the things that I would like to see if council and the city manager are going to do this, is to bring up that discussion in council meeting that you had on the cost of the police station. Because I would be very interested to see, even if it's not accurate numbers, estimates, to see what is the cost to renovate our police department building. Because we're gonna have to bite the bullet anyway. And if that costs 15 million, then we're gonna be a lot cheaper. From the track record that I've seen since I've been on the council now 1 year, and I'm an engineer, another certified professional engineer in Colorado, and in the Netherlands, the percentage of consultant fees to the actual construction cost of projects that I've seen in the city and the city managed, going through the council approved, is very concerning. The cost for actual projects, as soon as if I would do a renovation, if I say as a council, I think the consultant cost will be $1 million, and I'm saying consultant cost covering anything, whatever you want to call consultant, whether it's design specs, concepts, whatever. If I say it's $1 million, my consultant will probably quote me $950,000. But if I say I would like to see competitive bids, it might come in at $500,000, $250,000. So I think we've had a track record of certain prices. But that's not really your concern. But it will be a concern if we manage ourselves as city council a new police station. Because if we pay 50% more for everything, that's also going to come out of taxpayers. So anyway, I got a little bit off track there, but I think all of these things need to move parallel forward. I like the comments, the summary that Jessica gave, and you still have open options about that, because we need to address this for our community. both your services as well as.
I'd like to end with just a few thoughts. First of all, to the outgoing board members, I do agree. Thank you for your years. And some of you are termed off. You couldn't continue to serve if you wanted to. So I want to recognize that. I also want to say that we all come to this table as elected officials and staff members with, I think, a singular focus on the well-being of our community. In that regard, I recognize that the fire district has, though, solely the objective of taking care of the fire district, whereas we as a city council must look at a broader area of things, the police department, this or that. So I also I want you to appreciate that we're looking at it in the context of multiple assets and moving pieces. But I also want to say that I don't think there's anyone here who doesn't support the fire district or the police district and see the need for physical space for both. I recognize the potential benefits of a combined space. That's pretty obvious in my case. I would say that you have come to us with an opportunity and we have a responsibility to explore that opportunity. We really do. It's an opportunity. We also do need to, as I've said earlier, look at, are there places that we could renovate? And in my own mind, not just for the fire, or not just for the police department, but are there places, city assets that could be renovated or built on our property that could serve this? And I don't rule out, the reason I put it to any is because I don't want to make it a subject of being told where, well, this is where it will be, but we will look at it in the context of a community conversation. That doesn't fit there. So today we're focusing on one location and one opportunity. And then I'd like to say to the people in the audience as well, because who have worked on the initiative, I appreciate your citizen engagement. I don't know how that will play out, but I also know the city manager has made it very clear. So I want you as a fire district to know that whatever happens with this initiative, the design, the discussion will be coming to council, and I want to give Jose a chance to clarify in public forums. So I want to make that clear as well. I'd like to say this was a healthy conversation. We've got some possible options of doing a pre-application, coming back. We've got a commitment to coming together as a council. I believe we have a consensual commitment to coming together as a council to get you an answer as quickly as possible. Recognizing that it's an exploration, not a marriage, right? And as you said, there's off ramps along the way. On that note, let me thank you all. And I'll call this meeting to an adjournment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Want me to? Okay.